So are we doing the live stream? Do you want me to greet them? We're going to do that in a little minute, huh? Yeah, we're ready? Sweet. Hey, everybody on live stream, welcome. We're glad that you're joining us virtually or however you want to do that. Thank you. Thank you. You're kind and very generous and helpful. Thank you. And, of course, we have to have a fantastic joke. Fantastic is like dripping with sarcasm because my jokes are, less than fantastic. Nevertheless, I think these are really, really good today, sort of. So how about this one? And I have backups in case it goes really bad. Where do bad rainbows go? Like a bad rainbow. Where does a bad rainbow go? He goes to prism, and it's a light sentence. Right? Prism, it's a light sentence. I know, a light, L-I-G-H-C. See? I know. You're like, wow, I'm so glad I got here for that. Or you tuned in for that. I know, I'm on your page. It's pretty sad. But, I told you, there's a method to the madness. You start with a lousy joke, and then everything gets better. Right? It can only go up from there. That's kind of my strategy. So I'm letting you in on my secret. I want to talk today, and I started yesterday a little bit of a mini-series called Conversations with Jesus. And I love this whole idea of having a conversation with Jesus. Anybody up for a conversation with Jesus? Right? What would you, if you had your chance to talk with Jesus, what would you want to talk about? No wrong answers. Just throw it out. And if you're watching online, I think they can leave comments. Yes, no, maybe? Kind of, yeah, you can leave comments online. So what would you like to talk about with Jesus? Huh? Ask questions about yourself, right? How come something, what else might you talk about with Jesus? Conversations, subject, nothing out of bounds, yeah. What does heaven look like, right? That'd be cool. Other subjects you want to talk about with Jesus? The future, right? Who's going to win? Ravens, do we play today? Right. Get the inside track on that one. That'd be kind of fun. Other questions, subjects yeah. Yeah, your everyday life, right? Traffic, politics. No, not politics. Oh my goodness, seriously. Yeah. But it's just stuff, right? I'm like, hey, what's the best way to cook lamb? He would know, like lamb. He is the lamb. You're like, that's, I know. But I just think it's really interesting to think about conversations with Jesus. And if you think in the Bible, in the Gospels, Jesus, and I just I'm going to frame some things for us here. Jesus had conversations with basically four kinds of people, four types of people. And I guarantee you, in this room, watching online, there's some of us are at least one, maybe a combination of these types of people. So the first group that Jesus had conversations with is what I call the reverent. It's a nice way to say religious people. It would be, anybody ever watched Saturday Night Live and the church lady, right? And she did, sinner. That's kind of like the far end of that spectrum. But he had conversations with the reverent people. So like Pharisees, Sadducees, religious leaders, lawyers, those conversations, right? I mean, Nicodemus, for Pete's sake, Nicodemus was a Pharisee, right? Or one of those. And he was a religious leader. So reverent. There's a category that would be the reverent group. He also had conversations with what I call, I'm going to say this in this way, relators. That means his closest followers. The people who related to him on a 24/7, like 23 years almost standing every day, his disciples. So he had, like if you read John chapters 14, 15, 16, 17, that's all Jesus talking with, discussing among his disciples, his closest followers. So we had conversations. I would like to be the relator. Anybody in the room, anybody online, you want to be that category? I'd rather be that category than the reverend, really, just to be honest. Because if you read his conversations with the reverend, he lights them up. I mean, they go at each other, Sabbath, healing, blah, blah, pick something. So he had conversations with the reverend. He had conversations with the relators. He had conversations with people I call renegades. These were the people who were like sinners, and they weren't like religious compliant. They were, like the lady caught in the act of adultery that the Pharisees throw down at Jesus' feet. She would be a renegade, right? And I'm sure there are people here in the room watching online. We are renegades. We don't, we're not like compliant and legalistic and religious. We're just not even close, right? That's not even a remote bone in our body. But I would say the last group of people that Jesus had conversations with would be someone I call receivers. These are the people who got miracles and stuff from Jesus. The free lunch crowd, multiplied bread and fish, right? You're like, there's no free lunch. Well, Jesus gave them free lunch. They were excited about that and wanted him to keep doing it. These were the ones who got miracles. Their son was raised from the dead. Their daughter or kid was set free from demons. They got healings, miracles, and stuff from Jesus, receivers. Does that make sense to you? Kind of those four groups. So in those four groups, I would say probably all of us in this room watching online, we have at one time in our life or another been at least one of those, right? Anybody ever here in the room or on the line, did you ever receive something from Jesus? What have you received? Peace. Anybody get a job from Jesus? Anybody get a healing from Jesus? Anybody get an answer from Jesus? Come on, family. We got lots of stuff. We are all, in some respect, shape, fashion, or form. And I guarantee you, everybody watching, everybody in the room, at the bare minimum, we have all received forgiveness from Jesus. And he's probably forgiven you for stuff you don't even know. I guarantee you, that's true for me. So I'm a receiver, you're a receiver, we're all receivers, and we're happy to be receivers. But family, if you had to choose, if you could choose like which category you lived in, what category? If you could choose to be a reverend in that group, the religious leaders, if you could choose to be a receiver, a renegade, or the relators, like the closest followers, which group would you choose to be in? The relators? I would. I'd push you out of the way to get in first. You would be like, I'd put you on the ground and step in front, because I want to be front and foremost, like at Jesus' feet. But I want to tell you that a relationship, and you need to just kind of let this ruminate in your heart a little bit. A relationship is only as close as the person who wants it the least. Think about that for a second. Did you ever want to be close friends with somebody and they didn't want to be your friend? I used to call, when I was in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, I used to call Carla Martino every day. Hey, can you come over and play? No, Sarah, every day. Why I did this year after year, I have no idea. But I wanted to be her close friend. I wanted her to be my friend. But she didn't want that. So the relationship never went anywhere because she didn't want it. I've been on the other side of it. People want to be close friends to me, and I'm like, nope, don't need that circus in my life, right? And so a relationship is only as close as the person who wants it the least. So if you think about that, you're like, okay, that makes sense. So let me pose this question kind of on the heels. Do you believe that Jesus wants a close relationship with you? Is it possible that he wants to be closer to you than you want to be closer to him? Is it, you're like, no, it's not possible. Well, maybe. But as you think about that, I want us to look at somebody, because again, all of us online in the room, we have all been receivers. We've all got something from Jesus. But if you are interested in being in the relator group, like closest followers, then family, there's a progression, there's a transition from receiving to relating. Right? For all practical purposes, anybody can be a receiver. Right? I mean, seriously, that just takes open hands. But to transition into being a relator, like, how does that happen? What does that look like? And how could we experience that adventure? Because I would propose to you, it's an adventure. So I want us to consider a person in the Bible, in the Gospels, who was a receiver. And just because you're a receiver doesn't mean you won't continuously be a receiver. I think that the relators, think about it. All the 12 disciples, when they passed out lunch for the 4,000, the 5,000, remember that multiplied bread and fish? I guarantee you they also received bread and fish as they were passing it out. So I think that you can continuously be a receiver. I don't think one excludes the other. Make sense to you? So, but what does that journey look like from being a receiver to the transformed person that's a relator? How many of you would be interested to see what that looks like? I would. Like, I'm all on board for that. And I don't want a lot of religious, you know me well enough. I don't want a lot of religious platitudes, right? I don't need the right things to say and all that. I want to see the real time. I want to see what this looks like, and I want to see it in human expression. And I don't mind seeing human failure because I relate to that. So I want us to consider Peter, right? Because Peter, the very first time basically he has conversation with Jesus is in Luke chapter 5. If you look at verses 1 through 11, you're going to see here that he is a fisherman, right? So he is basically a blue-collar worker. And every day he gets up, every night he works all night, and he gets up and brings his net into the shore, and he's tired. And when we meet him in Luke chapter 5, he had fished all night and he didn't catch anything, right? So Jesus, there was teaching a big crowd. The crowd was pressing around him, and he says to Peter, "Hey, can I borrow your boat?" This is just some random dude on the beach, right? "Can I borrow your boat? You're a fisherman. If I get in the boat, I'll step away from the crowd and I'll be able to speak to the whole crowd without getting mobbed by them." Make sense? So he borrows Peter's boat, and at the end of talking, Jesus does this, like, so to speak, long presentation to this huge group of people. He comes and he says to Peter, "Hey, put your boat out. Put your boat out and you're going to catch fish." And Peter's like, "Dude," because he doesn't know Jesus, so he's going to call him dude. "We've been fishing all night, and we didn't catch anything. We're really tired. But nevertheless, at your word," right? And remember, when he's on the shore and he's mending and cleaning his nets while Jesus is doing his preaching thing. Jesus is preaching to at least a couple hundred people probably. And who knows if Peter's paying attention or not? I don't know. But when Jesus says, "Put your boat out," Peter says, "We're tired. We don't want to do that. Nevertheless, at your word." So he and his buddies, they put their boat out. And what happens when they do that? They catch a boatload of fish. Boatload, literally a boatload of fish. So much so that the boat begins to sink and the nets begin to rip, right? I would say this is a receiver miracle, right? Because think about it. Is Jesus a professional fisher? No, Jesus is not. Peter is. So Peter knows when you're supposed to fish, how you're supposed to fish, and the best way to catch fish, because this is his profession. And suddenly some random dude shows up, doesn't seem like a fisherman, and he gets this amazing, miraculous catch of fish. So if Jesus were to show up at your work and give you like a $20 an hour raise increase, wouldn't you be excited? You're like, "Hey, hang out. That'd be fantastic. Let's do some more of that." But that's not what Peter does. Jesus shows up, does the boat thing. Peter catches a huge load of fish. And this is Peter's response. When he comes to the shore, drags all these fish to the shore, he comes to Jesus' feet and he falls at his feet. And he doesn't say, "Do it again." Yay, do it again. That was fantastic. Can you stay around here and just do that whole miracle thing? I love getting all this free fish. Wonderful. No, Peter doesn't say that, which I think is weird. He falls at Jesus' feet and he says, away from me. I'm a sinful man. Why would you do that? Like, why would you tell the guy who just got you the miracle catch of fish to get away? I'd be like, hello, you can move in my house and let's keep doing this miracle thing, right? So, like, I think that'd be fantastic. But I appreciate what happens here. Because when he says this to Jesus, this is what Jesus says to him. Follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men. And when we decide to move from receiver to relator, appreciate that there's a journey, a transformation into your purpose, your true identity, and your design. I think that when Jesus said this to Peter, something ignited in his heart and said, I wasn't made to serve and acquire smelly fish. I was made for something more. But family, I don't think we can really fully walk in our divine purpose, our identity, if all we stay in our lives is in receiver mode. Need a miracle, need a healing, need provision, need you to fix this problem, intervene here, and receive. If that's all we're here for, and we're not here to be transformed to a relator, to a follower, to a close connecting day in and day out, then we miss the point. How many people that Jesus interacted with, they got miracles from him, but they never followed the man? Are we content? Is that all we're doing here? Is getting the handout, getting the miracle, being a receiver? Or are we moving in the path, in the pursuit, in the relationship? Remember, a relationship is only as close as the person who wants it the least. If I want to be a relator, then family, I can't just settle for getting stuff from Jesus. Miracles are great. I'm all for it. But I don't want to stop at just miracles. Because Jesus is more than just miracles. Jesus connects us as we relate to our divine purpose and identity. And no wonder sometimes we wonder, why am I here? What's my purpose? What am I doing? Even, I don't care how old you are. You're like, that's a question for the people in their 20s. Are you kidding me? I've had people in their 50s and their 70s. Now, why am I here? What's my purpose? Family, as we commit to being in relationship, depth, connection with Jesus, that's when our purpose and identity gets illuminated and we see it start to play out in our daily living. It's in the relationship, not just in receiving. So when Jesus says to him, follow me and I will make you a fisher of men, what does Peter do at that point? It says he drops his nets. He drops his nets. And he left his family. He left his dad. And I would say to you that if we're going to move from being a receiver to a relator, we do need to let go of some things. I'm not telling you to quit your job and leave your family. Don't even think like, this is what you... No, that's not what I'm telling you. But I am telling you that sometimes I think we hold on to stuff. And do you ever hear that story? There's some kind of monkey, and the way they catch him is they drill a hole in a jar, in the lid of a jar, and they put like peanuts on the inside. And this monkey that they want to catch, he puts his hand in the hole of the lid, and he grabs the peanuts, and then he can't get out because he refuses to let go. He's trapped. And that's how they catch him. And I think the enemy sometimes catches us, traps us, because we refuse to let go of stuff so that we can live in freedom, connection, identity with Jesus. So Peter let go. He let go of the nets. He let go of those family connections. Sometimes we have to let go of some relationships. We have to let go of some past behaviors, some identities, some values, some priorities. We have to let go of that stuff and say yes. Yes to the journey of relating and not only receiving. Anybody on board for that? Absolutely. But let me talk you through this as well, because in this journey, it's not like suddenly Peter said, okay, done with fishing, and then bam, he's a relator. Bam. It's not just like, smoke and mirrors. Shoom. This was a journey. And this was a journey where he followed Jesus every day, 24/7, for 2 to 3 years. And I'm going to talk with you in terms of like the gory, like Gory, the gory of following Jesus, and the glory. Because there is. You're gonna when you go on this journey to become and be a relator with Jesus, you're gonna have ups and downs. You're gonna have peaks, woohoo, and you're gonna have valleys. Blah. But it's all part of the journey, and it's not bad. We may not like all of it. We want the peaks and we want to avoid the valleys, but they're an integral part of us being close with Jesus as a relator. So what does that look like for Peter? Because Peter didn't just let go of the nets, leave his family. He took this journey. So let me walk you through a couple of the gory and the glory. So one of the first things is Matthew 14, verses 28 to 30. In Matthew 14, verse 28, the disciples are all in the boat. Thanks for bringing that up, Dion. You are the bomb diggity. I totally appreciate you. So they're in the boat, and it's nighttime. The disciples are there. It's a huge, huge storm, and the boat is going up and down. Jesus was left on the shore, and then in the middle of the night, Jesus comes walking on the water. Now, you got to appreciate, these are fishermen who know the Sea of Galilee, and they don't normally see people in the middle of the night walking on the water. Like, that's kind of abnormal. They've actually never in their whole lives seen that. So they're freaking out. And in the Greek, it literally says, he's a phantasm. He's a fantasy. It's a ghost. So all the disciples, rightfully so, if you had somebody showing up in the middle of the night walking on the water by you, you'd be freaking out too. You'd be like, ah! But I love what happens here. Peter says to Jesus, Lord, if it's you. Because Jesus always wants to be close to you. He says, bid me come. Jesus always, no matter what you're going through, middle of the night, in a boat, in a huge storm, Jesus will always say, come, I want to be close to you. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you smell like. I don't care how scared you are. Jesus always says, come. He never repels you. He never says, no. Genuine Jesus is always welcoming you. Because genuine Jesus wants a deeper relationship with you than you do with him. He's always keen. No matter what state you show up in, scared, unraveled, nervous, pretty, whatever, he's always saying, come. And Peter knew that. He knew if it's genuine Jesus is always going to tell me, come. Even if I have to walk on the water, do all, like, seriously, if I have to get out of the boat, Jesus always says, come. He never says, wait a second, no, did you tie your shoes? Did you take a bath? You smell kind of bad. It's got some of that weed running around. Oh, I saw what you did last night. I saw what you were looking. Maybe you need to clean up and then you can come. Jesus never says that. You don't have to qualify. Jesus always says, come, show up as you are, no matter what you look like. So Peter knows that. Jesus always says, come, genuine Jesus. So I appreciate this is the glory. The glory piece of this is Peter gets out of the boat. Think about it. For some of us in the room, some of us online, I'm a big adventure junkie. You know that about me. I've told you stories about all the dumb things that I've done that are adventurous, right? I love a rush. The only thing I haven't done not only, but one of them, I want to skydive. Like, I'm all in for that. But some of us in the room, some of us online, we're not quite wired up that way. Anybody get scared of doing some of that stuff? You're like, Well, Peter, he gets out of the boat in the middle of a storm, and he walks to Jesus on the water. That's the glory. Think about it. That's pretty outrageous. He's the only human entire history that has walked on the water, right? How many of you think that's a peak? He's walking on the water. And what if you're the disciples in the boat, the relators in the boat, and you're like, he's doing it. Oh my goodness. You know? And he starts to walk to Jesus, but just like the rest of us, the bottom falls out. And he starts to look, and come on, family, I relate to him so much, and I think you do too. Have you ever gotten distracted with the circumstances of life? Hello? Like, that's human experience. And he gets distracted. Why would he not get distracted? The wind is blowing. The waves are moving up and down. He looks around. He's probably got some of the stuff hitting him in the face, and he gets scared. Anybody relate to him? Come on. Completely. I do this all the time. I jump, I look. No. I leap, and then I look. And you're like, really? Oh, I could tell you innumerable stories. And then I get in a situation, I'm like, because I'm in over my head. That's classic. I get it. That's me. Leap and then look. I had a friend of mine tell me that sequence. I was like, I never thought to look first. That's an interesting. And I'm in my 30s when she tells me this. So you could tell, this is instinctual. So he gets distracted from the winds, the waves, the storm. And then I think he looks at it like, I'm not supposed to be walking on the water. This is that. So you go from glory, this peak experience, because you're wanting to be a relator to Jesus, you want to get close, and then the bottom drops out and he begins to sink, literally. Help, I'm drowning. Right? There's no fish to bail him out, not Jonah and the whale, right? 3 days, none of that. And I like it though. And some of us are like, you shouldn't have gotten out of the boat in the first place, you idiot. You should know better. Stop already. He got out of the boat. He walked on the water. He knew genuine Jesus would always say, come on, let's go. Let's party. Let's have some fun. Excitement out here in the middle of a storm. And let's do this. This is so cool. Jesus is stoked. You want to be with me? I want to be with you. Let's do this. That's Jesus. That's genuine Jesus. He always wants a closer relationship with us than we're even aware of. At the same time, we agree, yeah, let's go. And then life circumstances start to distract us. Lo and behold, the job, the diagnosis from the doctor, COVID, vaccination, politics. You want to pick something? Family issues, legal problems. Does anybody relate to any of that? And what happens is, because the circumstances of life, and we go from glory to gory. And it doesn't take long. Anybody ever realize that? I'm sure we can all relate. Come on. But I love this because he cries out, Lord, help me. I'm drowning. The circumstances are overwhelming me. I'm in the waves. I don't know how to swim. There's no life jacket. But Jesus is our life jacket. And he bails him out. It's okay. I got you, Peter. It's going to be fine. And you're not going to sink and drown. He goes from glory to gory. Let me give you another example. Because it's not just in the circumstances of life. Here's another really interesting one. So remember the Mount of Transfiguration. Anybody remember that? This is what happens here. I'm going to try to find the verse real quick. Here it is. Matthew 17, verses 4 to 8. So Jesus calls Peter, James, and John. He says, hey, come on up to the mountain. We're gonna, and Peter, James, and John go up the mountainside with Jesus. They follow him. And as they're on the mountain, they get sleepy. They get sleepy and they fall asleep. It's siesta time. It's afternoon. And I think if you're following Jesus, sometimes you could get tired because he's very busy. He's very active. He is supernaturally active. So you might get tired. And that's good by Jesus. But when they wake up, Peter, James, and John, they wake up, this is what happens. They see Jesus, and he's shiny. He's glowing. Like he's as bright, and they have to like cover their eyes. He's so bright. It's the transfiguration. It says he literally is transformed. And he's talking with Moses and Elijah, right? It's the three of them talking. I'm like, how do they know it's Moses and Elijah? Do they wear those little name tags? Hi, my name is Moses. Hey, I'm Moses. How do they know that? Elijah. And then Jesus is talking with them. And, can you imagine you're taking a nap and the first thing you wake up, and this is who you see? And Jesus is bright and like blinding eye, bright. And this is astounding. I would call this glory, right? This is an amazing experience, supernatural. And again, we're on the journey from receiving to relating. So the peak of it, I get all this supernatural insight, wisdom. This is an experience. This is fantastic. Jesus invited me. Only the three of us. This is so great. I get the inside track. More inside than any of the other. Just woohoo! Stoked. So Peter, in classic Peter behavior, says, hey! He starts talking without thinking. Anybody ever done that? Talk and I wish you want to put that back in, right? I think this is Peter. Hey, it's great for us to be here because we can make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, one because I think he's nervous. He doesn't know what to say, so he just starts talking. Do you know anybody that does that? They talk, they get nervous, and the more they talk, the more they're nervous, the more they talk. So some of us, we get nervous and we get quiet. But some people, their reaction is to talk. And you're like, just zip it already, stop. So he's on the glory, because he's being classic Peter. He's just being himself. And I love this, verse 5. While he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadows them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud says, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. And what's the next 3 words? Stop talking. Zip it, Happy Meal. You don't need that. You're not adding any value here. Stop talking. And if I heard a voice from heaven, and I had been like doing this talk thing because I'm so nervous. And then I heard a voice from heaven, God the Father saying, listen, 1 mouth, 2 ears. That's the appropriate proportion. Listen twice as much as you talk. But I like this because it's, again, glory, transfiguration, and gory. Oops. I was talking too much. I was being, okay. But it doesn't, and appreciate that Jesus is not repelled by your humanity. Whether you're sinking after an amazing miracle, whether you're talking too much, oh my goodness. After the transfiguration, gory and glory. And sometimes I think, if you're like me, sometimes I think my personality disqualifies me. I'm not the contemplative type, or I'm not the demonstrative type. I see people that are like super into praise and worship and they're loud, and I'm more quiet. So I just don't think I could be that close because I'm not them. Or the other side. Well, I'm too loud, I'm too vocal, I'm too talkative, that just disqualifies me. I'm not quiet and sensitive and and I think, family, I want you to appreciate that Jesus wants you close in who you are. He's not repelled if you're too talkative or if you're too quiet, if you're too extroverted or you're too introverted. None of that repels Jesus. Jesus says, I love you, I want you close. Peaks and valleys. And just because you go through some valleys doesn't disqualify you from being a relator. In fact, I think it qualifies you all the more. I want to give you one last example of peaks and valleys. This one's really astounding. This is Matthew 16. And in Matthew 16, we're going to look, I'm going to have you go to Dion verse 16 as well. But I want to give you the backstory on this because Jesus is talking to his closest followers. And he says to them, who do people say that I am? And the relators, the disciples, well, some say that you're the prophet Elijah. Some say that you're so-and-so, Moses. Some say, and Peter says, and Jesus says, who do you guys say that I am? And Peter says in verse 16, and again, I think this is glory. Peter says, you are the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus says to him, I mean, like, that's a major, he recognizes this is genuine Jesus. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. And Jesus affirms him and says, flesh and blood hasn't revealed this to you, only by the Spirit of God. So that's glory. I mean, that's a peak experience. A few verses later, this is very interesting. Verse 23, remember, they're going through this progression, and Jesus tells his closest followers, he's like, same conversation, and Jesus says, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to get beat up by the religious leaders. They're going to crucify me, and I'm going to be raised from the dead. So Jesus has given him the foresight. Like, this is what's going to happen. He's preparing them. And Peter, right after he says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, Most High, then Peter says, no, I'm not going to let you go and be killed by the religious leaders over my dead body. Right? I mean, this is all the same conversation. So we get the peak, the glory of you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And then 7 verses later, we get Jesus telling him, get behind me, Satan. Because Peter's rebuking Jesus. Get your head around that one. Right? I mean, seriously. What you just said he's the Son of God, and now you're rebuking the Son of God. That's kind of the bottom, right? That we've gone from peak to valley. How many of you ever you can see that? And Jesus calls Peter Satan. Get behind me, Satan. I think that's a low point. That's a very significant low point. But family, when we're on this journey from receiver to relator, we're going to have these ups and downs, right? And you're going to have failures. How about this last one? Peter is at the Last Supper with Jesus. Jesus is telling him, hey, y'all are going to deny me. And Peter, again, this is after Peter's been with him for almost 3 years. Peter's like, I'm not going to deny you. Why? Why after 3 years, 24/7, why would you argue with Jesus at this point? Have you not learned that he's always right? And you just need to agree with him? Stop arguing? Stop the arguing. So Jesus says, I'm going to get crucified tomorrow. The religious leaders, I'm going to raise again. No. And y'all are going to deny me. No, I'm never going to deny you. Yes, Peter, you're going to deny. No, I will never deny you. Have you ever argued with Jesus, tried to make him change his mind to fit your opinion? We all have. And Peter did too. And remember, we're on the same journey from receiving to relating. So in this ups and downs, some of this is learning curve. Jesus is right. Even when you disagree, Jesus is still right. The end. And Jesus says, but he still, Jesus says to him, yeah, before the rooster crows 3 times tomorrow morning, you're going to deny me 3 times. Remember this? And no, over my dead body, that'll never happen. All this boisterous hubris, like, no. But that's exactly what happens. The rooster crows. In one of the Gospels, it says, Jesus looked at him. Peter remembered what Jesus had just told him, and he went away and wept bitterly. He totally messed up. And he messed up with Jesus. He betrayed him. He disowned him at the time of Jesus' biggest need. He pretends he doesn't know him. And I would suggest that sometimes we have found ourselves in the same place as Peter. We have walked away from Jesus. We have seen Jesus and experienced Jesus and had amazing. But we messed up. We lost the plot. Anybody relate to that? You don't have to raise your hand and admit it, but I have. I know I have. And so now what do we do? What do we do? in that place. And I want you to appreciate that Jesus continues to walk with us in the glory as well as the gory, in the peaks and in your most base human failure bottom of your life. Jesus continues. And his faithfulness to you is not dependent on your faithfulness to him. We know that. It's his loving kindness that endures forever. So Peter denies Jesus 3 times and has the recognition, oh my goodness. Jesus gets crucified. Peter's the man he's loved, he's given his life to for 3 years. The man he's been an ardent follower is dead, crucified. And this is a brutal, gory, gruesome death. And I would propose to you that Peter's scared, as well as the rest of the disciples. If they crucified him, what are they going to do to us? Right? Guilty by association. Oof. So Peter goes, and this is in John chapter 21. Dion, I told you 20, I meant 21. Sorry about that. John chapter 20. Peter goes, oh my gosh, I love this. This just rocks my world. Peter goes back to fishing. And I get it. Whether he went back to fishing because he was discouraged, I don't know why exactly. I think he had a variety of motives. I'm going to go back to fishing because I'm scared and I want to get out of Jerusalem. So fishing is, a little distance from it. Maybe Peter went back to have some stability. This is some comfort. This is something I know. This is something I've done for my life. It's my profession. Some continuity, some kind of comfortable routine. He goes back to that. I don't blame him. If I had been, so to speak, traumatized, disappointed, scared, all this stuff that goes into the betrayal and Jesus' crucifixion, and then he raises from the dead, but what's that supposed to mean? I don't know. That's bizarre. So we go back to fishing, and Peter takes like 4 or 5 of the disciples, relators, with him. They go back to fishing. And they're fishing all night. And guess what? They don't catch anything. Does this feel a little bit like deja vu? When was the first time that you realized he didn't catch anything? When he met Jesus, Luke chapter 5. Right? So we're doing kind of this like Pete and repeat, sitting on the fence, Pete falls off, and it's repeat left. Do it again. So he's back at fishing. They don't catch anything. And there's a dude on the shore who's like, hey, did y'all catch any? No, we didn't catch anything. Throw your nets on the other side. And they do. And they catch, tell me, how much? Little, medium, lot? Another boatload of fish, like a massive, miraculous catch of fish. This feels, oh my goodness, I've been here, I've done this before. This is the first time I met Jesus. That's what happened, right? And I want you to appreciate, the very first time that happens, they drag this huge catch of fish, the receiver mode, can drop it there, and Peter comes and he falls the very first time, the miracle. What does Peter say to Jesus in response to this huge catch of fish? The very first time, what does he say? Away from me. I'm a sinful man. He's telling him, get away. But now, after 3 years of becoming a relator, this is totally different behavior, mindset, and words. Because the first time, he's like, arm's length, move away, like opposite ends of the magnet, repel. No! But on this side, when he's a relator, he can't stay away from Jesus. He jumps in the water to swim to Jesus and get in front of him. Anybody ever do an open water swim in the early morning? It's kind of cold, in case you wondered. It's frigid. So Peter goes to massive extremes to get himself in front of Jesus. Because here's what happens. In this journey of receiver to relator, as I'm in the receiver mode, I begin to make transitions, and I go through ebbs and valleys, peaks and valleys, ebb and flow. I go through glory and glory. I go as I keep walking. And I love that Jesus walks with us through all of that stuff, through the undulation, right? The winds and the waves, through the transfiguration. And you're talking too much because maybe you have a vocal personality. And then you disagree and argue with Jesus. You're never going to go, and you're the Christ. And then, no, you're not going to. And all that peaks and valleys. And he keeps walking with Jesus, and appreciate that Jesus keeps walking with him. And if Jesus can keep walking, if he is our example, Jesus is continuing to walk with you. The relationship is only as deep as the person who wants it the least. Do you want that depth? Because Jesus wants it with you. And no matter what your failures, did you call Jesus, Satan? Did you argue with Jesus? Did you deny Jesus? We've probably done all those things. We've done all that stuff. And still Jesus shows up. He still shows up. Why? Because he loves you. Because he is love. And he finds you irresistible, even when you don't like yourself. You get disgusted with yourself. You're like, I wish I could crawl out of my skin. I wish I could be Anybody ever feel that way? Come on. But Jesus is like, that's okay. I think you're awesome. I'm going to show up, and I know who you are. I know your failures. I know your weaknesses. I know your past, and I know your potential, the horrible things you could do. And when I know the great things you've done too, I know the glory, and I know the glory. And I still show up, even at your darkest, bleakest failure moment when you've denied Jesus and you went back to fishing. Jesus shows up. Will you show up? Will you go the extra length, jump in the water when it's frigid cold? Because I want to be a relator. I don't want to just live in receiver mode. I want to be the closest follower that despite my failures, Jesus doesn't say your failures disqualify you. Jesus isn't repelled by all that, all your humanity, your frailty, all that stuff. Jesus still shows up and says, hey, guess what? I made breakfast for you. And the key to walking from receiver and moving into relator is this last conversation we read about between Jesus and Peter in John 21. Peter lands at the shore, swam to get to him. Jesus has breakfast. How many of you know that's a really big deal? These men have been fishing all night, and he's got hot fish, maybe warm bread, comfort food for fishermen, right? I mean, this is love it. And they sit down and they eat. And then it's a conversation between Jesus and Peter. After they finish eating breakfast, they get up and start walking. And Jesus says to Peter, Peter, do you love me? I think that's the question Jesus asks us. Do you love me? I screwed up. I started to drown when the circumstances of life distracted me. I screwed up. My personality, I'm really talkative. I betrayed you. I argued with you in all of my failures. But Jesus says, do you love me? And can you imagine Peter? Lord, you know that I love you. You know my humanity, my weaknesses, my shortcomings. You know the things I've done wrong. I love you. And Jesus says, feed my sheep. And then he does it a second time. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord. You know I love you. Shepherd my sheep. He does it 3 times. Peter, do you love me? Lord, you know all things. You know all things. You know that I love you. Tend my sheep. Family, the transition from receiver to relator all revolves around love. Loving Jesus and letting Jesus love us. Showing up to Jesus, with Jesus, not only in the peaks, but also in the valleys. We have all failed and missed the mark, messed up. And there's not a human walking on the planet, nobody watching, that hasn't missed it. And your failures don't disqualify you from being connected, related, and close with Jesus. Because he shows up in your life even when you fail and blow it and you lost the plot altogether. He still shows up because he is genuine love. And he finds you irresistible. So let's take Jesus' invitation. Follow me. And let's walk with Jesus from receiver to relator and walk into the identity and the purpose and plans that Jesus made for us from the foundation of the world. Because from that point on, I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you. Jesus' love for you is never a question. But our love for Jesus, with his help, we can walk into that love, consistency, intimacy, connection, and purpose and design, identity that Jesus has for us. So I'd ask you to think of a couple things, just kind of some takeaways here. And in a minute, I want to minister a few verses as well. But for a couple takeaways. Number 1, do you need to leave? Are there some things you need to leave? Peter dropped the nets. He walked away from some relationships, his family. Are there some things you need to leave? Maybe there's some failures. Maybe there's some memories. Maybe there's some behaviors, some priorities. Are there things you need to let go? Maybe you've just been after Jesus as a receiver. Maybe you need to let go. I'll follow you regardless of what I receive or I don't receive. I want to move from receiver into relator. And you can be both. You can absolutely continue to be a receiver as a close follower. Absolutely, no doubt. But some of us need to leave some things. Disappointment, anger, or some relationships. Some of us have some messed up values with money. Some of us need to leave the politics. Stop with the politics. Some of us, we have some internal stuff that we need to leave. How many of you can identify some things you need to drop? Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. That's some song from what's that? One of those, what is it? Frozen. Yes, my daughter watched it, and that was a theme song for a while. Let it go. So I want you, whatever it is you need to let go of, might be a couple things. Just put your hand up, palm up. I want to pray for you. And kind of symbolically put that in your palm, whatever it is you need to let go. A couple things. Let's do that. Father, we come to you now, and we bring to you in our hand what we need to let go. Questions, frustrations, worries, disappointments, fear, experiences, memories. We bring these to you, Father. And we turn our hands over now and let go. Palms down. I let go. I let go of the memory. I let go of the trauma. I let go of the wrong priority. I let go of unforgiveness. Whew, that's a big, heavy one, family. That's hard to carry. Too heavy. We let go. We let go. And we thank you that you help us to walk with you free from these things that have held us, that have been so heavy. We let go. And then the second thing I would ask you to do, you can look at me now. I would ask you to keep walking. Keep walking. Did anybody ever see VeggieTales? And the one who walked around the wall, Joshua, keep walking, but you won't knock down our wall. Remember Joanna? Keep walking, but she isn't going to fall. It's plain to see your brains are very small, so keep walking. Anyways, VeggieTales. You should look it up on YouTube. It's super fun. That's a great song. And it'll kind of stick in your head for many years, clearly. But I say that to you so that you would keep walking with Jesus. If when you fail, if when you hit a bottom, if you hit a peak, glorious times, fantastic miracles, the heavens are parted, God is, you have whatever, just keep walking, stay with Jesus, keep walking. Hand in hand, Jesus by your side, you're by Jesus' side, no matter what happens. You make a mistake, you talk too much, you don't talk enough, you do something stupid, I shouldn't have argued. Just keep walking. Jesus is still by, and remember, Jesus wants a close relationship with you. A relationship is only as close as the person who wants it the least. I want a close relationship with Jesus, right? I think you do too. So let's just keep walking, no matter what happens, what we do, what we don't do. And then the last thing I would say is let genuine love grow in your heart. Maybe, and I would strongly encourage you, if you can come tonight, you need to come tonight, because I'm going to talk about genuine love. And I believe that Peter swam to Jesus because he couldn't resist genuine love. He knew that Jesus would be there welcoming him, that Jesus wouldn't shame him. You're an idiot. You betrayed me and you argued with me about that? God, how could you be so stupid? Jesus didn't do it. That was not the conversation. The conversation with Jesus was about love, because that's who Jesus is. That's Jesus' top priority, is you receiving and living in Jesus' love in Jesus, and you loving. To love and be loved. Family, this is the heart. Jesus said, John, I think it's 13:35, people know you follow me by your love for one another. The defining characteristic of following Jesus is not how moral or immoral you are. The defining characteristic, according to what he tells us, is love. People know you follow me by your love for each other. Now, does that give you permission to go out and behave like a hellion? Not necessarily, because I don't think that's very loving. But the end game, family, is love. This is why I believe Jesus defined that conversation with Peter when he had breakfast with him. Do you love me? Because it all started back here in receiver mode, and Peter becoming transformed into a continuous relator. Anybody on board for that? Being a continuous relator? Absolutely. I am. So let's keep walking, right? Let go of stuff, keep walking, and do the whole love thing. Let Jesus love you, and let Jesus love through you. Anybody on board for it? Moving in that adventure? I'm all there. Want to just minister a couple verses as we finish here. And of course, I'd encourage you to grab your copy of Hey God, Can We Talk? So about 2 years ago, I did a series called Conversations with God. Oh my gosh, it's an amazing series. I think I did it for, 10 months or something. And this book was what came out of those conversations with God. So I encourage you to grab it. It's got some really amazing conversation starters in it. It's back there as well. And if you fill out a little white card, we have a white card back there for you. If you fill out that card, we have a free gift for you. Just a little booklet that'll be really encouraging and helpful to you. So make sure you grab a couple of those things. Plus my newest book on hope, that's back there as well. So we have that available. Happy to make sure you get that. And of course, I want you to come back tonight, right? Because tonight, honestly, I think tonight, of all the messages that I've ever preached, this one tonight has probably had the biggest impact on me, like flat out, and just been completely riveting. I mean, it has changed me in great ways, in really, really great ways. So I'd encourage you to make sure and come. So the verse I have is for this gentleman through here. You have white hair. You're sitting next to probably your wife. You got like a little bit of a plaid shirt on, button down, and you're 3 rows from the back, and you're kind of smiling like you think it's you, and it is. Aren't you happy for that? And I'd welcome you to give me some feedback at the end. I'll have this up here for you as well. So just to encourage you, and you can kind of think through it a little bit. The verse I have for you is Jeremiah 33, verse 3. And it says this, "Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and mighty things which you do not know." And there are some questions that you have in your life, things that you don't know. And some of those questions and things you don't know, they've been big things, kind of big boulders in your life. And you've gone around those boulders and those questions, and you've analyzed, you've evaluated, you've sorted through it, and you're a very intelligent man. And you haven't come up with answers. You haven't come up with solutions and how do I resolve, how do I fix, how do I... And God is saying to you, these boulders are not for you to resolve, for you to answer, for you to fix, for you to solve. These boulders are for you to call unto me, and I will answer you, and I will tell you things that you don't know. So rather than circling the boulder yet again, it's time to bring that question, those questions, those big boulders, those big things, bring those to God and say, I don't have the answer. I am calling to you, and I am asking you, based on your word, that you would answer me and show me great and mighty things that I don't know. And God is saying, when you call to me, take some time and anticipate that answers come in little pieces and little parts. And some of this is God will answer you in increments, in pieces and parts. And I know this is going to sound kind of goofy, but if you want to swallow an elephant, you start with one bite at a time. Maybe you start with the toenails, or you start with nibble on the ears. And God is saying to you, I'm going to give you one bite at a time. You can't swallow the whole boulder. You can't answer the whole question with this immensity. But I'm going to unlock one bite at a time, one piece at a time, one pebble at a time. I'm going to answer you. So the key thing, and some of this you're like, why just little pieces and parts? Because God's end game for you is presence, meaning to be together. God's end game with you is always fellowship and communion and connection. And God is inviting you to call and use these questions as a runway to have more connection and closeness with Jesus. One pebble at a time, one piece at a time, One little answer. And what you'll see is this is like I said, a big boulder or a big puzzle. And you'll see pieces. You'll see a little piece here. Sometimes you'll get a corner piece. Sometimes you'll get more edges. Sometimes you'll fill in some of the middle. But God is saying to you, I will answer you, and I will give you the pieces, and I will show you, and I'll show you what the big picture is. Because right now you have all the pieces in it, but man, you don't know how they go together. And God is saying to you, I will show you and answer you and show you great and mighty things that you don't know. And to that end, I would say God is inviting you not to rely on your own understanding, Proverbs 3, verse 9 and 10, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And so it's not a solution that you have to come up with and answers, but God has things for you, great and mighty things that you don't know. So just encourage you with that. Also, I want to minister, and we'll do that. Verse I have is for the lady through here, and you have on a striped shirt, glasses, you're sitting on the aisle, and you have gray hair, and you know it's you. You're waving? Maybe, kind of, maybe not. All good. The verse I have for you is 2 Chronicles 20, verse, I'm writing it down so you can have it here, verse 15. And there's a battle that's going on, Israel and their enemies. And then it says in verse 15, the second half, it says, do not fear or be dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. And God's encouraging you that there's a lot of people around you, a lot of opposition, a lot of even contention. And sometimes that can be very distracting and discouraging, and you're like, it's even maybe sometimes kind of scary. And you may not let it be seen on the outside, but sometimes it's the internal turmoil. And God is saying to you, don't be afraid, don't be dismayed. It's my battle, it's not yours. And so when you find yourself getting stressed and fearful and anxious, remember, this is God's battle, not yours. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to be bigger than all that. You can turn the battle to God and release the anxiety, release the tension and the fight. Release it to God, because he will go before you, make a way, and he will fight on your behalf. He goes in front. And so you don't need to think, I got to get out there and solve and fix and fight and have all the contention. You don't, because it's God's battle, not yours. Let him fight on your behalf and roll your cares on him, because he cares for you. And he's got this, the fighting and the contention and the arguing. He's got this. It's God's battle. And don't let that start to settle into your soul and your spirit and the poison, the venom of the fight and the conflict. Let it be God's battle, and release it to him, and trust that God is going ahead, fighting on your behalf and clearing away and dispelling the enemy, dispelling all the contention. And don't get distracted. Sometimes it seems like it's people, and it is not people. It is actually Satan working through people. So you don't argue and wrestle against flesh and blood, but it's principalities, powers. So trust that God is working, and know that it's a spiritual battle, not just a natural physical battle. It's not solved with your mental wisdom, and it's not an emotional strength issue. It's God's battle. So trust and rest in God fighting on your behalf, going ahead and dispelling the enemy, so that when you walk in, there's already peace and serenity and calm, because God has made a way when there seems to be no way. So I hope that encourages you and witnesses in your heart. We totally love your guts. We think you're fantastic. We want you to keep coming. Come back tonight. Tonight's message is going to be spectacular, fantastic. And I'd like for you to welcome Cecil, because he is a fantastic, amazing, incredible man who's really smart, tremendous wisdom, and got great people skills.